Hey friends, this is David Bedrick, doing a Facebook Live. It's been a little while, but I'm excited. That didn't sound very exciting, did it? I'm excited, I'm interested, and happy to be here. I guess I'm a little nervous too, so... and then I'm looking at my screen. Hey Heather, nice to see you. It's been a while. Lucy, nice to have you here. Kartar, hey, good to see you here as well. And Marisa and Shoshana. Oh, nice to see some friends. Hey Lauren, nice to see you too. Great. I'm just going to take a moment for people to arrive. Dawn, I know some people don't like. I've gotten some criticisms. There's always criticism of some kind, and they're good ones or not, but they're criticisms. But some people say, could you please, hey Kim, Denise, don't spend time saying hello to people and get right into it. But part of me is a friend to people. Hey, Deborah and Denise and Lucy, likes to say hello and also warms myself up and welcomes myself and you, and then gives me a moment to let people arrive before I start. Hey Rama, good to see you too, and Bridget. Okay, I wish the phone video showed time so I had a sense of that, but it doesn't. So tonight I'm going to talk about shame. I'm calling it Beyond Shame because I want to think about with you what it looks like to look at ourselves, deal with our personal growth, address our difficulties. Hey, Jen and Gabriel. Heal. I'm always tentative to use these words because they have such strong vibrations to them that people get triggered to thinking certain things that I don't usually mean. Hey, Lorianne and Louie. Hey, Charlene. But I wanted to think about all those things outside of a shame paradigm. That means I have to look at shame to see how to go beyond it. So I wanted to say that. As a way of starting, I'd like to say a couple of words about myself. Some people don't know me at all, and some people do. Most of you probably do, but there's new people around. My name is David Bedrick. I've been a therapist for 20 plus years. I've written a couple of books, one critiquing what I call mainstream psychology, mainstream popular psychology. Some people said I should have called it. That's probably a good point to that. It's called Talking Back to Dr. Phil. It looks at like 19 episodes of a Dr. Phil show, analyzing them from a depth perspective, a Jungian perspective, which would be my own perspective, a non-shaming perspective. So where Dr. Phil says, what are you thinking? How's that working for you? There's a shame implied about in there, and that book goes through those 19 episodes and then looks at what Dr. Phil does a little bit, but mostly says, here's where I've had similar clients, here's what I've done, here's other ways of looking at that, non-shaming ways, in-depth ways. And then my second book came out 2 years ago, and it's called Revisioning Activism. I'm looking at social justice issues, also where shame is the central point for me, although I don't talk about it directly there, but that's the topic for another Facebook Live. I've actually done some shame videos in social justice. I always say to people, ask people if there can be a reciprocity. That means I think about these things, I make outlines, I make some notes, I take questions, and then what I ask of you is if you could share the video. Of course, that's totally up to you. I'm not going to stop you or block you from watching my videos, but it's a request. I do this for you. Could you do something for me and the people around you? What does it do for me? It allows my voice to be carried to other people, and that's a goal for me. Some people say, is that more of a business thing? Are you just financially interested? I've gotten criticism like that. I have a full therapy practice, more than full. I don't need more clients. It's nice to have people be interested in me, but I really have a genuine motive to have people get the intelligence I have. Is it useful for everyone? No, it's my view. So there's many views, and there's your view. That also counts. So anyway, if you could hit the share button, I'd appreciate that. What else do I want to say about that? I schedule my private practice 3 months at a time. I'm about to schedule March, April, and May. If you're interested in that, there's a video about it on my timeline, or you can personal message me and ask me more questions. I don't want to spend more time on that aspect. Hey, Loretta and Carrie and Sue, nice to see you here. Anyway, thanks for hanging in with that part. Before I proceed, or is that before, or as a way of proceeding, I was printing out some notes, and then I looked at a photo that I have on my desk, and my eyes got watery in the memory. It's a photo that is 30, I'm 63, it was around 30 that I got the photo, so it's about 33 years old. And I'm going to show you this photo and see if you can see it. Okay, that's me. Not the guy in the orange, okay, haha, but the guy in the blue. That's me as a younger man at 30. And that guy next to me was a Burmese monk. I say was because he passed some while ago. I guess we could say he's still a Burmese monk in some traditions. He's a Burmese monk. And his name was Bhante. Bhante is the spiritual title for a teacher, a spiritual teacher in Burma. Bhante and G. We called him G because no one could pronounce his name well. It was something like Gunatarama, but whenever anyone pronounced his name, he laughed and he said, Bhante G, Bhante G. They called him G. And the reason why I'm mentioning him in the topic on shame is because, well, one is an intimacy. I want to share something about my own story. I believe that leaders or teachers today ought to model a little bit of who they are. Their messies, their overly defensivenesses, their insecurities, their mistakes in life, and then try to bring out their intelligence, the whole catastrophe, all of that stuff. So when I was around 30, I was going through a really difficult time. I was going through a divorce. Many things were happening for me. My world was crumbling apart. I didn't know where to turn, and I picked up a book on meditation. I got really excited about it. Wow, this is great. I started meditating. I had these amazing experiences. Whoa, I found them in books. Oh, that means this, and that means this. I'm off to the races. I'm having this incredible, deep spiritual experience. And then I tried to make it happen. Can you feel it? I tried to make those deep experiences happen, and it didn't. And then I tried harder, and I tried harder, and I tried harder. And that's me. I'm the kind of person who tries harder. I grew up to try harder. That's part of my growing up with my family. I was part of a Jewish tradition and background. Pressures from being in the United States and trying to make it. All kinds of social and personal psychological variables lead me to try harder. That's good in some ways, trying harder, and it's not so good in some ways, because sometimes you strain yourself and you're trying to do something that's not exactly you. If I say try harder at being something that's not you, it's not going to be so good for you, but that's what I did. So I got into knots, and then I started going to retreats to find teachers. Some of you know Jack Kornfield or Sharon Salzberg, or Joseph Goldstein, all kinds of well-known teachers today have written books, teachers of Buddhism and meditation. I went to them and said, help me meditate. And they all gave me a method, and guess what I did with the method? I tried hard to do it, and trying hard to do it, I got myself into the same knot. Hey, Christine, I got into the same knot, and I got into the same knot that I got in by myself. It didn't matter what method you gave me. Do this, focus on this light, do this with your breathing, look at this issue, stay with your physical body, do Vipassana and this and that. All these retreats, 3 days, 7 days, 10 days, I meditated once up to 21 hours a day, trying to overcome the thing that was not allowing me to reach this experience. Can you feel what's inside of me? I'm trying to overcome something. And the way I'm doing that is by trying hard. That trying hard is my psychology. Why am I trying hard? Why don't I think, ooh, this hurts? Why am I not noticing that I'm straining in a way that doesn't feel good to me? Because shame had entered me very young. And I didn't believe in my own experiences, respect my own experiences, take my hurts and difficulties seriously. Not just as a matter of something to try harder, but as a care and compassion for myself. There was something that didn't believe in me, dismissed, I say, and denied my own inner experience, gaslighted or blamed me. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? That's a shame mind. I'll just try harder. That went on for years and years. And then I went to meditation teacher after meditation teacher. Everyone gave me a method. I tried the method, and the same thing happened. David got tied up in knots. The method was different, but David, his psychology, the shame that bound him, that led him to try harder and not be compassionate to himself, that hadn't changed. And none of those teachers noticed that until I met Bhante G. Bhante G, there he is again. So I went to Bhante G on my interview, on our retreat. I said, Bhante G, this is what's happening for me. I'm going through all this hell. I'm going through all these difficult experiences. Help me, help me. And he looked at me with this sweet smile, and his eyes got all moist. He looked at me and goes, oh, David. And I said, yes. He goes, meditation, not good for you. I'm not trying to mimic him and put it down his accent. That's my best accent of his. And it was so touching. I started crying, and he put his hand on my shoulder. It's okay. This doesn't have to be good for you. And I thought, what an amazing man. In my view, I'm not putting down other teachers. In my view, he was the real thing. Why? Because his meditation practice had impacted his eyes and his heart, and he saw me. He didn't see a person needing to learn a method. He saw a person that was hurting himself regardless of the method. Now, I'm not saying I didn't have interesting experiences and learn things through meditating, or anybody else shouldn't meditate. I had great experiences over the years I tried. But he was the first one whose eyes were clear. I would say there was no shame in his eyes, meaning he looked at a person suffering. He looked at a person hurting himself. Could you imagine? You might say, here's a great technique, and David kind of goes, ja, 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 and his face is all bloody. And then somebody says, try doing the other side, ja, 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 and it's bloody. People didn't notice I was bleeding. But Bhante G, it was the first thing he saw. How could he not see it? He saw this poor young man in a hard time in his life, trying really hard, beating himself with something and making himself suffer. His eyes saw that the method wasn't the issue. He saw another person. That touched me so much. Bhante G was one of my first lessons in a non-shaming witness. He sees the person, not the method. I don't think you're not doing my method. You come to me as a therapist and you say, what should I do? And I say, try this, and it doesn't work. I don't think you're not doing it well. I think the method's not working, or the attitude's not working. I'm seeing an individual in their individuality, their uniqueness, their authenticity. I'm not seeing a person who's not doing my method. In psychology, when I got trained, we talked a lot about resistance. There was resistant clients and how to overcome clients' resistance. Can you feel it? So you're coming to see me and you're not going along with me. You're not accommodating me. You're not agreeing with me. You're not doing what I say. And rather than thinking, something I'm doing is off, or they're communicating something to me, or they're a powerful person, or they don't need my help, they don't know that yet, or they need to show me their intelligence, not listen to the mind. All the reasons why a person would not follow my lead, but would be asking me to follow theirs more, listen to them more. That's not so uncommon. Feel their own power. Let's say a zillion reasons why, but I learned that was resistance. Can you hear the shame? You're not going along with what I'm saying. You're not following my instructions. You're not taking my medicine because something is wrong with you. You're screwed up. That's the background message. You're resistant, or whatever the thing is. You're not a good patient. Excuse me. All those are shaming. Okay, that's the background. Let me take a drink of water. Hey, Sarah and Anto and Lulu, great to see you. I want to talk about 5 different points that I've written down about shame. Now, often when I do Facebook lives and do classes, I also teach a fair amount. I have an institute for shame-based studies. I'm doing an intensive now. 12 students, that was my max, are going through a 6-month program. So, and whenever I teach or go onto Facebook, I try to give my model of shame. Hey, Wanda, but that takes a while, and I don't want to take the extra time. I'm coming off a cold. One of the best colds I ever have. I talk about that maybe later. Best meaning it really dropped me out of the normal world, and I learned lots of interesting things about myself. Not just to rest, that was good, but how much I like being in a different kind of mindset than I sometimes press myself into. Can you hear the same problem? I still need Bhante G around telling me, David, pressing yourself too hard, not good for you. I'm still learning. It's only 33 years, Bhante G. I say, give me another 10 or 12. That's how long it takes some people. Certainly it takes me a long time to learn certain things if they've been ingrained and shamed very early. So I have 5 points I want to make, and I'm not going to go through that shame model. If you want to know more about my model, please Google my name, David Bedrick, YouTube, and shame, and you'll find all kinds of videos. You can also find lots of them on Facebook. If you go down, you'll find lives 30, 40 minutes, an hour long talking about it. But that model of shame, why is it important? Because most people think of shame as a feeling. I feel ashamed. You criticize, they say, David, I say to someone, you're an idiot, and they say, you shamed me. So I'm not defining shame that way. It's not the wrong way to define it. I just have a different way. Why do I have that? Because I researched the issue a long time ago when I was working in a university. I taught psychology for 8 years in a university. I'm also on the ethics committee of an institute now. So I taught psychology, and I thought a lot about shame, and I thought, what can be an empirical idea, not just a person's feeling? What does it mean? How does it begin? What is its etiology? How do you intervene on shame? So I had scientific kind of questions, and I tried to answer them. So I think my model has an intelligence to it that helps me understand and make changes and intervene and make suggestions. So I have a specific model about shame. The model of shame has to do with, hey Laura, long time no see. The model that has to do with how we are witnessed, how we are seen. And I'm doing this because here's a person, and here's a shamed lens. Not their shame, I feel ashamed, a shame lens. And that shame lens does something to them. It denies, dismisses, and blames them for difficult experiences. It denies, dismisses. Again, my model, I go into it in more depth. That's what it does. And then when I come to therapy, or I'm trying to help myself, or I'm trying to deal with my difficulties, I don't think, whoa, I got really hurt as a kid, or I'm lesbian and it's really difficult coming out, or I'm an individual, I'm an introvert, or I've gone through these kinds of things, or I'm a woman dealing with body images. Of course I have those issues. Rather than think those non-shaming things, those understanding things, I think, what's wrong with me? How come I can't diet? How come I still have this problem? Why am I depressed 10 years later? Why is David insecure at 63 when he's been doing therapy for over 30 years? How come? What's wrong with me? That mindset. And then it doesn't allow you to get in touch with experience. It doesn't allow me to know myself, because I'm not thinking about what am I like? What kind of nature do I have? What kind of person I am? What kind of things that happen to me? I'm thinking, what the hell is wrong with me? Hey, Kelly, Melina, Morgan, nice to see you. What's wrong with me is a central question. And that's a witness. It's a way of seeing myself. I was once seen that way. Somebody looked at me and said, the reason why you're suffering, David, is because you're a screwed up human being. You're effed up. You don't get it. You make up things. You're overly dramatic. You're too sensitive. Something's wrong with your psychology. You deny. You're making up things that aren't true. You're making things bigger than they really are. You're the one who causes problems. That kind of voice is in my psychology. And then I no longer know myself, is all I know is what's wrong with me. I don't think, if I say I'm scared, I don't say to myself, ooh, what's that fear like? No, it's in my chest. Ooh, it shakes me. It makes me want to run away. Maybe I should run away more often and not try to push myself so much. I don't think that. I think, I'm afraid. What's wrong with me? How do I overcome my fear? Can you hear the difference between those two? Number one, I'm interested in my experience. That's not a shaming witness. I'm scared. I was scared today. I got nervous doing this Facebook Live. I haven't done one in a while. Oh, David, what's going on? Tell me about your fear. It makes me want to hide. Go ahead, hide. Oh, yeah, this feels really good. They don't have to see people. What's so good about not seeing people? Then I'm not feeling judged. What's so good about not being judged? Oh, then I can say all the things I want to say. Fascinating. Don't think about people so much. Can you see what I did? I made an intervention of myself that wasn't shaming. Now I'll give you the shaming intervention. I'm feeling scared. Well, do you need some tea? Maybe you should take your calm. Maybe you should take deep breath. Why don't you run? Why don't you relax? How come you're still ashamed? I'm treating the fear as a problem that I need to resolve, as opposed to an ally that I need to befriend that's going to take me on a journey. Two different methods. One is shame. One is a non-shamed way. Okay, that gets to my first point. I'm going to give you 5 points, then I'm going to answer some questions. Hey, Molly and James, I know I'm racing a little bit. I often do that. My excitement and passion comes up, and it comes out sometimes by racing. And then criticism comes up. Slow down, slow down. And I think that's a good idea. I should slow down. But dear one who's saying slow down, you're not seeing the excitement in me. Well, then express the excitement. Yikes, this is so important to me. Talking about shame is so damn important. I could cry, I could scream. It's such a huge variable. It gets in the way of everything. It's not just some moments we feel shame or some people feel shame. It's a lens that we look at ourselves for. Whew. Okay, thanks, David, for expressing your passion and your excitement and not only slowing down. Maybe you can slow down now because some of your passion came out more directly. I heard myself slow down. That might have helped. I made a non-shaming intervention. Okay, 5 elements of getting beyond the shame. One is, I wrote a post not too long ago, and I've written many posts that have this beginning: nothing's wrong with you. That doesn't mean you don't suffer. That doesn't mean you don't have a tumor. That doesn't mean you don't have anxiety. That doesn't mean you don't put a needle in your arm and it's good to do. That means that there's an attitude through which, and a lens, remember that lens, the shaming and non-shaming lens? There's a lens to look at oneself, for a healer to look at you through, that doesn't think, what's wrong with you? It thinks, oh my gosh, you're putting a needle in your arm? I wonder why. Not because you're screwed up, not because you're undisciplined, not because you're a mess, not because you can't do the program. Those are all fine. Not against programs. But I'm looking at you, in this case, thinking, maybe that person's putting the needle in their arm for a reason that I don't understand. Maybe they wanted to be in touch with something. Maybe there's something in that, a kind of a medicine. Some people say people comfort themselves, medicate themselves. They do, but it's very nuanced. When persons do in an addictive process, many different things are happening. I could talk a lot about addictions right now and what shame has to do with making it so difficult. Addiction programs, 30% effective. I don't care what anybody says. I read tons of research, 30% effective, whether it's laying on of hands in one day or it's a year in treatment program, whether it's 12 steps, 30% roughly effective. 70% of the people don't change. Why? What's going on? I would say shame has a lot to do with the idea that something's wrong with me. It's embedded in most change efforts, almost all change efforts. So the first thing is we need an attitude that looks at a person differently, just like I modeled with myself. A person says that they're depressed. Let's talk about the depression. Go into it. Show it to me. Let me feel it. Let me help get to know it. A person saying they smoke cigarettes. Can you put a cigarette in your mouth, an imaginary one, so you're not supporting your cigarette? Tell me what it's like. I'm doing all kinds of things to get to know the intricacy of your experience, as if there's an intelligence driving what you're doing. I'm not saying, therefore, you should put a needle in your arm and possibly die from it. I'm saying that I'm trying to understand you as if there's something intelligent in you that I need to understand as your helper in order to have a non-shaming lens. So I'm not just saying, what's wrong with you? Get rid of this. I'll help you get rid of it. Even if I am a good-hearted guy and you say, gosh, David, I'm snorting cocaine and it's ruining my life. Can you help me stop? And I say, sure, I'll help you stop. And that's the only thing I say, and I start giving you programs to help you stop. I'm indirectly complicit with the shame. Check that out. I'm indirectly complicit because you're thinking something's wrong with me. And David's saying, sure, I'll help you stop. And David's agreeing with your inner view that something's wrong with you. Not intentionally, but complicit. Because I haven't said, I want to help you stop, but let's talk about it. Let me understand it. If I don't do that, then part of you will feel shamed, and you are very likely to not go along with anything else I'll say, because something inside of you knows that there's a shaming program going on, even for good reasons, to stop you from doing a drug. I want to give you so many. I'm in an inner conflict now. Part of me is like, tell them the story of that cocaine person. Tell them that story of that smoking person. Tell them the story about that person who was 500 plus pounds and eating ice cream. That would take too much time. Make the time. It's such a good story. Another time. It is a good story. Okay. Attitude. The nothing is wrong with you attitude. The second important thing about getting beyond shame is to know this. Violence, abuse, and trauma are real, including intergenerational trauma are real. Now, why am I saying that? Because so many people have symptoms and are struggling, hey Isabella, are struggling with things and don't connect it and haven't connected it to abuse, violence, or trauma. They come and they say, what's wrong with me? I'm so freaking out. Hey, Ricky, I have so much anxiety, and are not connecting that to a trauma. Or they're saying, I can't leave my home, and I haven't been out for a long time, and don't connect it to trauma. Or they're saying, I'm smoking a cigarette, and don't connect it to trauma. Or they're saying, I have a relationship pattern, and I get into a relationship with this kind of person, a rough person, or a person I'm caretaking, or a person that's codependent, whatever, and not connecting it to my trauma and abuse. So instead of understanding me as a subjective experience, a person with a story, a person I can understand, listen to, learn from, that's a non-shaming view. I look at them as a person who's got problems and difficulties, like they're sick, like a pathology. I call that pathologization. It's not a term you can find in the dictionary. Pathologization. I make a pathology out of what you're doing instead of getting a story out of what you're doing. This is so common. This is so common. Most of us don't know the stories of us as individuals, and very few people understand the story intergenerationally. How many women have I dealt with? I've done a lot of stuff on diet and body image. How many women have come to me and said, I want to work on body stuff? And I say, how was your mom? How was your grandma? And they tell me similar. Grandmother also didn't pursue her artistic career. My mother did it. The traumas that existed. Sexism alone has created a trauma in so many, maybe all women. You could disagree with me, women, and know that better. But so many women that I've experienced have this trauma from the way women have been treated. It's in their bones. And then they have reactions. And they don't think that it has to do with a background story. So violence and abuse and trauma are real. You have to know that and think about that. Not everything is caused by that, but you have to have a trauma awake method if you're going to be beyond shame. Or work with trauma in some way. That's what I mean by trauma awake. I mean, you have to realize that that could be happening and that people might not know it and might not know the power of it. Some of you know that Freud did his original research. Freud was the Western male archetype, stereotype, paradigm giver, right? The fire giver, the paradigm giver for the West. Not for all, not for indigenous cultures, not for all cultures, but for the West. And most of the way we in the West, meaning me, not everyone's from the West here. I don't want to be West-centric too much, but we in the West have a view that comes from that Freudian idea, even if we don't know it. So Freud did his study. He interviewed lots of people, mostly women. He talked to them, interviewed them, and found out, guess what? Every single one of them talked about what we would now call, most of us would call, sexual abuse, sexual trauma as a child. He wrote that up. I'm not making this up. He wrote that up. You can read that paper. He wrote that up and delivered it to a bunch of white, male, probably straight, maybe not, who knows. That's how they present. White, male, Western doctors, MDs. There were no psychologists around. And these people did not like what Freud had to say. Can you imagine why? He's saying, hey, you guys, guess what? Some of your kids, they might not have, and some of your patients, they have sexual abuse. That's what's going on. They have a trauma. No. They didn't like it. Freud freaked out. Whatever he did, he modified his understanding. And he said, by the way, people have complexes, Oedipal complexes, electro complexes. David's going fast again because he's excited. Okay. Yeah, this is so important. Right, I got to remember how important these things are. The lesson is so important. Freud modifies understanding, saying people weren't abused. People, remember, abused. That means somebody hurt this person. That's not what happened. Now this person doesn't exist, the perpetrator of that sexual violence. Inside this person are sexual fantasies, imaginations, dreamings as a child about their parent. This person has an internal psychological problem. They have a pathology, a psychological problem inside. This person is now invisible. They don't exist anymore. The original study said they exist. They don't exist anymore. It took a lot of women in the last 30 years, mostly women, that's why I'm saying that, not because men haven't done things, mostly women, pushed this person back into the view of a psychology. People are actually abused. There was a lot of fight about that. A lot of people were saying it's false memories. Still a lot of people push back about that. You know about that in the Catholic Church. You know about that around the sexism and the Me Too movement, how much pushback it is. Remember the Michigan doctor, Vassar, took 162 women to speak up before anybody believed that this person exists, that these women weren't just screwed up, women who had killed themselves, suicided, suffered body symptoms, had difficulty raising their children, suffered depression, all sickness, not a response to a violence. Can you follow? Person alone. Why is that so important? Because we all do that. We all stop connecting our difficulties to issues and stories that we've actually lived and start thinking of ourselves as having a pathology, a problem, a sickness inside. Shame. That's a shaming view. Nothing wrong with addressing our sicknesses. Nothing wrong if you're depressed and going to get medication. And consider the possibility that there's a story in there that needs to be known. If you want to get beyond shame, you have to start thinking about violence, abuse, and trauma, and multi-generational trauma. As a Jew, I have to think about trauma, multi-generational trauma, to understand that pattern. If you want to understand why I couldn't let go, why I tried over and over and over again, is partially because of my Jewish story. Not for you, for me. Other people could try also for other reasons. For me, there's a Jewish story and an overcoming of something and coming to America and making it. And now I'm going to prove myself not as one of these lowly, second-class, third-class, worthy of being killed citizens. A huge pressure. So that person who tries, you can't underestimate the power of that. David, relax, stop trying. If you say that, you don't quite get me. You don't quite get the trauma in the background and how much this Jewish psyche tries to make it against that. Whoa! It's a very powerful thing, not only in the Jewish community. Wow, didn't expect to talk about that. Okay. Number 3, about getting beyond shame. Individual diversity rules. We are different. There is no one way, no right way. I wrote a post. I should have written a poem. I wrote a post the other day, and I said, it comes to our healing path. There's many different ways. I said, some need to become more forgiving. Others need to become more fierce and hold people accountable. Forgiveness is a really big thing. If somebody says forgive, it may be just right for that person, and it might be shaming for that person. Either way, I'm not saying that's the intention of the person offering the advice. I'm saying for somebody, that advice is wrong. Individual diversity. Sometimes it's right to forgive. Sometimes it's it's wrong to try to forgive, and it's right to be more fierce and look something that looks more unforgiving. Some people need to become less judgmental. Don't be so judgmental. And some people need to become more judgmental. Why more judgmental? Because I'm not making judgments clear. I'm not seeing a person say, I'm going to make a harsh judgment. That person's rough. They have contempt coming through them. They probably want to hurt people. Why aren't I making that judgment? If I'm so careful about not making judgments and I'm so correct and nice, I might not be fierce enough. I might need to learn to make judgments. Some people need to be firmer in setting boundaries. Some people need to open up a little bit and say, maybe that person's not so bad. Some people grow in the light. Hey, bring in the light. Change your vibration. Go into the light. Be more positive. And some people go into the dark. Stop smiling so much. I went through a whole period where I got the smile off my face. Hi, everybody. I'm always happy. I needed something to put me into the dark. I met people who were really struggling, therapists who have gone through terrible experiences, worked with vets in the war, and people of color who've gone through difficult experiences. Take me down into the dirt, into the grime, into the earth, into where the stuff is growing, into the muck of life. The mud, people say sometimes. Don't put me in a light. Don't lift me out. Drop me down where my soul is hanging out. Some need to learn to be okay by themselves. You need to learn to love yourself. Love yourself before you love anybody else. And some people need to be loved by another person. You get the idea. There's no right one way. So if I have a method, right, that says, this is my method. My method says I do this. My method is a 12-step program. Great for some people. My method is laying on of hands. Great for some people. My method is whatever it is. Meditation. My method is whatever your method is. It has to be individualized. Even meditation with the greatest teachers was not right for me because the attitude. There's so many reasons why people are individuals. And if you start thinking of a method more potent than the individual and what they're showing to you. I'm thinking of clients who I tried to help, and I thought this would be great. A client I'm thinking of who was having a series of bad relationships. She was convinced that this relationship she was in was really bad, and everyone was telling her to leave. And I said to her, if I tell you to leave, what will you do? She said, I probably won't either. I said, then I'm not going to. Anybody's normal mind would tell that person, get out of that relationship. But I can tell if I said that, she would just feel bad about herself. Shamed for not being able to leave, and it wouldn't help. So even things that look obvious, we have to follow the individual diversity rules. Number 4, social identity is real. If you're a Asian woman, first generation in the United States, if you're an Asian woman who's still living in Asia, if you're a Polish man who's living in Poland and lived through certain fascist elements and still have that in their aspect, or in Russia and gone through certain kinds of things, or in South America and dealing with issues of the environment, or you're Jewish, or you're a woman, or you're Hispanic, or you're an immigrant to the United States. Those social issues are so huge, and psychology, darn it, psychology, I'm sorry, you have spent too much time missing it, not spending time, not looking at that particular issue. I can't tell you the number of women who have come to me over the 20 years and basically had said, I'm summarizing way too quickly, but some have said it this exact way, I have an anger problem. And I said, do you think that has anything to do with being a woman? What do you mean? Why would that be? I shouldn't be angry. That woman, maybe it does nothing to do with sexism, but if a woman is saying, I have an anger problem, that's pathologizing. Why not think at least of the possibility as healers for ourselves or psychologists or whatever you do with people as coaches? Why not think that woman is against her anger? Maybe she's against her power living in a sexist world. Why not think that there's nothing wrong with her? She has anger that she's learned to be against, that she feels some shame about. Why not at least consider that view? We must. Okay, we could talk about other social issues. Social identity is real. Remember, we're talking about attitude has to change. Violence and abuse and trauma are real. Individual diversity rules. Social identity is real. The last thing I want to say. The last thing. He laughs at himself because I'm always saying a last thing and then I have 10 more things. Everybody who's been to my classes knows that. Remember I said that here's the person with the saying they have a difficulty, they have a problem, and here's the shaming lens. So they come to me or to yourself, why am I like this? Why am I still doing this? How come I still go out with this kind of person? Why am I still drinking this? Why am I still eating ice cream? How come I still can't sleep? Why do I stay up at night? Whatever they're doing, right? What's wrong with me is the view that almost everybody has internalized, because it's not just one shaming event, it's a shaming culture. Thanks, Catherine. How then, if that person comes to me and says, or you're coming to yourself or a friend and says, what should I do about the fact that I'm like this? If you're David is up a lot at night and doesn't sleep enough. What should I do about it? I need to sleep more. I don't think, let me understand more about your sleeping and why you're up and what makes you up, and maybe you need to be awake and maybe you don't need more sleep. I'm not just thinking, how do we get you more sleep? I'm buying into the whole damn thing. Yeah, Don, some say in activist circles, shaming is necessary to create change. Don, I'm going to talk more about that. I have a very different view of shame. I don't think it's true, but I think those people are talking about something that's needed. Don just asked a question, do you need shame to change people? I have a different definition of shame, Don, and nobody needs it. It's an annihilation. Do people need to feel guilty, responsible, accountable, regret, grief over harms? Yes, but I don't think that is shame. I think of that as something very different. It's a definitional problem. Okay, what do we do then? If I'm coming to you and you're my therapist and I say, I'm eating too much ice cream, I'm gaining weight. I love ice cream. I hadn't eaten it for quite a while, and now I have 2 containers I just bought. So this was a problem a while ago. I'm eating too much ice cream. How do you can you help me? What's wrong with me? And you start saying, well, David, you could try doing this, or eat 1 scoop for this time, or eat this. Have you tried diet ice cream? Whatever. How do you get in touch with this guy who's eating for ice cream for reasons that we don't understand? Without laying it on me. Well, people eat ice cream because of comfort. No, with finding out who I am. How do we do that? How do I contact the genuine person if shame is blocking the view? Because shame says, what do you mean why I'm eating? Because I'm screwed up, because I'm undisciplined. That's why. Why am I depressed? Because something's wrong with me. Why am I still doing this? Why am I in relationship patterns? Because I still can't get it. I don't know how to assert myself. Maybe. But we're still not getting access to the person. We're getting access to their shamed understanding of themselves that they've internalized and deeply, deeply believe the culture has supported. How do I get access to that? This is the last part about the shame thing. We need techniques to access the person beyond the conscious mind, which is filled with a shaming view. Beyond ego, we could call it. I don't like that term so much. Beyond the conscious mind. How do we do that? There are many different ways. You all have ways. I have a few that I prefer. One, I like to look at nighttime dreams because nighttime dreams show me what's inside of there. It shows me some of this and how it's acting, and it shows me all the imagery and symbolism of what's going on under here so I can see you outside this lens. So I love nighttime dreams. Somatic psychotherapy. I spent, 26 years studying somatic methods in psychology, working with the body, working with inner body experiences, physical symptoms, subtle experiences, cramps, movements, how you feel in the moment when your jaw is tight when somebody's talking to me. All this somatic experience that's going on. And of course, common things, cramps, stomach aches, acids, all kinds of things. Somatic, meaning soma, meaning body experiences. Why? Because the body holds genuine experience. And even if you say, I'm scared, how do I get over it? I can say, what's it like in your body? Whoa, now you're asking, well, I'm scared. I know, but what's it like in your body? Well, it's shaking in here and it's tight over here. And now I'm getting actual experience outside of this lens. Okay, I can tell you more about the methods. Somatic methods are great. Movement methods like dance. People do a lot of dance work, dance therapy. I've worked with dance and movement a fair amount. Expressing artistically through movement, through dance, that gets around that conscious mind. Art can do the same thing. Working with art and drawing, that's a major method I like to use. Deep meditation kinds of things. Working with dying meditations and dying experiences, which I did learn a lot from the Buddhists, so that people, because dying experiences, not just literal death, although that also, psychological dying experiences through dying meditations takes people outside their conscious mind into something that's closer to their death, quote unquote. That means their conscious mind is somewhat dead and they're into deeper experiences. So there's all kinds of different things. Working on early experiences, working on ecstatic states, all kinds of things to do to access that, to be a good beyond shame healer. One needs to have one or more methods. I think you need more than one method because some people, movement won't work for them. Some people don't like to connect with their body. Some people do. Some people love dreams. Some people don't, etc. So some people prefer doing kinds of inner work and close their eyes, and some cultures do. So in my view, for the diversity of the world, we need many methods. To me, I need at least all of those. Okay, those are my 5 issues. The attitude, nothing's wrong with you. Violence and abuse and trauma are real. Individual diversity rules. There's no right answer. Social identity is real. I have to consider the social stuff. And then you need methods to contact the individual experience. Okay, there's a few questions I'm going to try to answer. Hey, Mira and I'll try to answer these questions the best I can. I haven't thought about them. I always wait just to see how I'd react. If you haven't already shared the video and you appreciate it, I would appreciate it. Help me educate other people. I do many things to help educate people. I do therapy that can be rather costly for people. I do classes. Some of my classes are rather costly for people, although less than individual sessions. I've written a couple of books. But these kind of things I do, they are part of me wanting to give what I have to offer, not for everyone. Take what you can take. Some things are wrong for you, toss it away. But I do this without a cost. So as a way, my ethical system says, do some things that don't cost anything. And then I do probably 1.5 to 3.5 hours a day of things to try to offer people whatever I have to offer without pay. This is one of those kinds of things. The payment I would like, share it with people so people get to hear about it. So if you hit share now, it will go onto your timeline and other people will hear. Thanks a lot. Okay, questions. Hey, Catherine. Catherine says, does deep-rooted shame of childhood ever go away? This isn't such an important question, Catherine. I want to say 3 answers. I'm thinking now, I'm feeling into your question and what it would be like if you were sitting with me asking me this question. What would happen in me? I would think, yes, maybe it does. No, sometimes it doesn't. And then I don't know because I don't know you. So those are all coming up into my mind. I don't have a single answer because single answers tend to shame and it's not going to be right couldn't be wrong for you or other people. Now let me dream into that question. Let's say somebody comes to me, Catherine, and says, I've worked on my shame for a long time. It's still there. It's still there. I might not tell them, Catherine, let's try to get rid of it. That might be shaming because now they're thinking what's wrong with me. Potentially, I can't get rid of this. Will you be the right person? Are you going to drive in on your white horse? David knows the answer. All my shame will go away. That would be somebody in my 25, 30s. I might have wanted to do that, but I'm too humble, genuinely, by having clients that don't get better so quickly or at all in the ways that they want to, Catherine. So I have to admit that to you and myself. What can you do if that shame doesn't go away? There's many things a person can do to say, this is part of my story. This is part of the trauma, perhaps, of my life. Generational trauma, my trauma. I live with certain pains. Here's my wound. Can you see it? Here's where I got cut. Here's where I lost my limb in the army. Here's where I lost my eye. It's like that. We develop a relationship, Catherine, with aspects of ourselves that removes the shame of what we're calling shame, removes the shame of shame, so we learn to live with ourselves. What's so good about that? Compassion enters, love enters, a genuine life starts coming out of that, and a life that has a limp. Is it wrong to have a limp, even a limp of shame? I call it human. So I don't want to buy into the, yes, we can get rid of it. I have the answer. I think that's not deep enough. It's not fair to the human condition to say that. Thanks. Anita, what is the daily practice one can do to heal shame? Anita, there are so many practices, and if I spend time with you, I probably would have a specific idea. I'm sure I would have a specific idea, or you would, or we would come up with one together. There's a few general things, wrong way to say it, there's a few things that often help people. One, working on inner criticism. Why? Because inner criticism goes on for many of us incessantly. If I stopped myself, Anita, and said, do you have any criticisms of yourself, David? I'm really listening. Look at the clock, David. Oh my gosh, it's almost 10:02. You've been going 50 minutes. You said you should go 30 minutes. Why are you talking so much? How many people are going to listen? I could go on like that. So that's inside all the time. If I'm never aware of that, then I'm getting beaten down. Can you follow? I'm getting, where's my little pens there? Oh, fell on the floor. I'm getting beaten down all the time, and that's not shaming in and of itself, but there's nobody witnessing. There's nobody seeing that. Look at my videos about witnessing. There's nobody witnessing that, and then shame enters. So if I would give you one thing, and it might not be the right thing again, Nita, but I would say, try this. At the end of the day, write down 3 criticisms you have of yourself, not 20. And if you don't think you had them, make them up, and whatever ones you make up are probably the ones that were there. Write down 3 criticisms and respond to them. Respond saying, ouch, it hurts. Feel the pain of being criticized. And then give those criticisms a pushback. No, that's wrong. You don't understand me. That starts to take an inner abuse scene that usually gets constellated early and witnesses it. And that witnessing is what is the change of shame. Lauren, hey Lauren. Lauren, I see you have a number of questions and my time is running, so I might clump them together or not answer all of them. That's not out of disrespect for you. Is the opposite of shame self-acceptance of our many aspects of experiences? Lauren, I think that developing a non-shaming witness, a non-shaming viewer of ourselves does have a kind of an acceptance quality and does end up accepting more about ourselves. But I don't define shame the way you do as implied by your question. I'm not really sure what you think shame is. So I'm thinking not as shame as shame is the opposite of self-acceptance. I'm thinking shame is a very specific thing that does 3 specific kinds of things. Look at my videos on YouTube. And that particular kind of shame needs to be the opposite of that is a different kind of witness. Acceptance is a way of talking about it, but I have a very specific definition of what acceptance looks like. So, yes and no. I'll just try to work on your second one. If so, can we aim for autonomy and self-acceptance and defiantly determine not to seek validation from others? I love that. What I would say to you, Lauren, or to anybody who would say, I may be getting you wrong, Lauren, so I'm just dreaming into the question, not trying to understand you per se. But if someone said to me, Lauren and other people, can I defiantly determine not to seek validation of others? Now I'm doing it like this. You may not have that energy in you, Lauren. I would look at that person and say they're working on being more defiant, on not seeking validation, on not caring what other people think. They're working on that. They used to be more tied into what other people think. And that looks like a direction of their growth and healing to have more of that. It might. Maybe look the opposite, but it might look like that. In that case, I'm supportive of them, their defiance and their clarity, their fierceness about not looking for validation, I'm thinking I'm going to support that. But not for everybody, you see. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Somebody else might say, might come to me with a very different kind of energy and question and psychological situation, and I would say, ask others for some support. Ask others for some praise and some love. You need it. I might say just the opposite, Lauren. So it depends. I'm reading into the question based on the way you ask it. Shay, what ways have you discovered are the most effective to get at the root of our shame? Whew, Shay, yeah, at the root. It's different for different people, Shay, and I hate to say that. It depends on the condition. If they're working on trauma-bound shame, then I think working on that trauma to some extent will help. Why do I say to some extent? Because some people need to. I'm going to say something that not everyone's going to agree with now. Some people are so traumatized, or the trauma is locked in a place, and they need to walk away from the trauma, not work on it. They need to get away from it. I could talk about all ways I would determine whether that's true, but some people need a break from how hellish life has been. So some people then, getting the root of it means to walk away from all the difficulties and connect with other parts of themselves, Shay, that are not connected to the shame. That means the shamed one doesn't heal, but they connect with other aspects of themselves that are less in that shame. That can actually get to a root in a very strange way. Counterintuitive, not strange, I should say. And then some people need to go into the deepest experiences. The general principle for me, Shay, is developing a non-shaming witness by practicing something with yourself or getting somebody else who sees you that way. As a therapist, then, if I work with people over time, I continually pour on them a viewpoint that doesn't buy into the shame that's going on inside of them. Pouring that on to every step they take. Why am I like this? And I continually see them through non-shaming eyes, not because I'm trying to fix them, but because I genuinely don't look at them that way. And people need big doses of that because they have big doses of that shaming witness lumped into them early, and the culture reinforces that. Okay, last one. Emily, shame, this is not a question, she says. She doesn't know how to pose it. Shame rooting in core mother wounds. It seems that when it roots from the mother, the origin of birth, and since birth, or at least a very young age, it's much harder to overcome. Okay, then we develop patterns, I'm less than, etc. Emily, I'm not sure if I'm understanding everything you're saying here. You're referring to a kind of shame that's connected to a trauma. I'm calling it trauma or violence and abuse. Something really that hits the person, insults the person, assaults the person, and then views the person in a certain way, not just the abuse, but views the person in a certain way of mothering or non-mothering or negative mothering, we'd call it. I like to call it a non-mothering or negative mothering because the word mother in psychology has taken on too much heat, and I don't like what it does to mothers. Too many mothers think that something's wrong with them. Anyway, my phone's ringing, I'm going to ignore that. And I don't like that particular idea. But there is a negative mother or a lack of mothering or a shaming mother, certainly. And that's really important. How do people address that particular thing? Working on the trauma, for sure. I'm thinking out loud now, Emily, because I don't have a feeling for you other than you're talking about something highly difficult to move, and what do you do about that? So I guess I'm having a compassion for you, the difficulty, for whoever you're referring to that has that kind of trauma, an understanding of that. You have a framework for thinking about it in terms of a mother wound, so that means you're researching, studying, so keep doing that. That's working for you. You probably wouldn't present that intelligence. You sound like an intelligent woman in that particular way, connecting with other people about that. Eventually, over time, learning to mother oneself in the positive way, in a non-shaming way, or connect with mothering principles that exist around you and other people, or in the earth, or trees, or rivers, or spirits, or ancestors. Many people need to connect with mothering principles, and did. I've worked with people who've had traumas that are so awful they would never even get close to dealing with that, but they go sit by trees and they feel better. They don't know that, so they're looking for those principles in nature, in ancestors. So there's other ways of getting those needs met. I'm not saying it heals the whole thing, but the mothering principle now, the great mother, the spirit mother, something that's not a personal mother only, might be very important for that particular kind of person to make contact with. They might not be able to just mother themselves if they don't have that internalized. Second thing I want to say, Emily, is if a person has that negative mother very young in them, they're likely to be mothering themselves the same way, dismissing what's going on for themselves, denying what's going on for themselves, abusing themselves in certain ways, putting themselves in dangerous situations and not caring for themselves. Whatever those patterns are, that means that negative mother is inside. So starting to become more aware of how that, I'm calling it a negative mother, how that negative mother has been internalized is very important. So you don't just only look at it as an outer scene, but you see it's happening all the time inside to yourself. That awareness itself has a mothering quality. It sees from a non-shaming view something's happening hurtful to you on an ongoing way. Whew. Hey friends, thank you so much. If you're interested in working with me, like I said, my schedule is opening for March, April, and May. I schedule all of that at the beginning of February. I have some spaces that'll close up in a couple of weeks. If you can, share the video. Thanks for hanging in and bringing your questions and your hearts and your ideas. Lots of love to everybody.